now talk a little bit, building on this, on collaboration. So collaboration is the identification, release, and union of all the gifts of ministry. That's what collaboration is. So it's identifying, it's releasing, and looking at, this is the communion. Okay. The communion of all these different gifts. So that's what we're going to try to do in our integrated pastoral communications plan. Before you leave here, we're giving you the big picture today. We're going to break it down so you can understand the pieces. But we need to, the first phase 1 and 2, the research and the design phase, means identifying what the gifts and the talents and the resources that exist. We cannot presume, because we are in ministry in our diocese, or even in the conference, that we really know what's out there. Because we usually gravitate to that which we are familiar when there are other opportunities out there. So we need to look at that. So what better image, if we look at this spiritually, theologically, for what collaboration is in that beautiful icon of the Rublev's icon of the Trinity, which speaks of, that as I say to my students, that $1 million word of the perichoresis, the eternal dance, the eternal conversation that of the Trinity that is constantly in motion. And if maybe you know the theological interpretation of it. Right now we're not going to go through that, but I think it's a very important, because the energy flow, the energy flow in the perichoresis of this icon, which is the icon of the Trinity, is what Rublev did this so creatively in writing this icon, is it's this movement, depending on how you look at the figures here, but the movement, if this is the Father pointing to the Son, this Son, and the Father and the Son looking at sending of the Holy Spirit, there is an energy flow with the body. It's meant to be dynamic. The perichoresis of eternal communication and flow going on and on and on with the Trinity. That it's that life of the Holy Spirit that's dynamic there. And when, as you know, when Rublev wrote this icon, he left this space empty for us to place ourselves in that flow of that eternal energy of the Trinity. And that's powerful. I mean, I use this icon with my classes all the time, and it's my favorite icon. I have several of them at home and in my office, and I give them as gifts at the university, because this is what communications is all about. Meditating, contemplating, and thinking of the Trinity as our model, our metaphor for understanding authentic communications. The eternal dance, the eternal flow, the eternal energy of God. And we see in 1 Corinthians from St. Paul, when he speaks about all these are the work of the one and the same Spirit. When he says we are the body of Christ, we all have different gifts. How many times have we heard that? Sometimes I wonder, do we really look at that and really accept that diversity of different gifts? And we all can't do everything. And that's another reason for this collaboration. And in Romans, he says, just as each one of us has one body with many members, and not all members have the same function, it's the same thing of collaboration with communication. Every ministry needs some dimension of communications. It is about communications. We need to find a way to use radio, television, social media, the internet, print, in catechesis, in liturgy, in evangelization, social justice, ecumenism. All ministries need communications to articulate this mission. And as Bishop Jason said, already the AAC has identified its criteria, its vision of the issues they want to address. The plan that we're doing, the Integrated Pastoral Communications Plan, is to animate that and to bring that to reality. So now to each of the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. We are losing our sense of common good. I'll tell you right now, in higher education, this is a real concern of us, that young people are coming into higher education so that they can get a good job, money, nice house, vacation, work 5 days a week, 35 hours a week, and not think about what their vocation is to the common good. It's all about me, me. I think that's one of the problems that we're facing today. And at the university, I'm part of a committee that's trying to re-envision higher education, because we believe that higher education as it exists is dying out. It is not what it will be in the next 15 to 20 years. So there's a lot of serious questions. But you know, the common good, what the common good for us is the common good of the diocese, the common good of the region, that we think broader and have a larger context than what we have. But the question I ask, and I'm going to stop for you to discuss this, what is it about the idea of collaboration within church ministry that closes us off to new possibilities and new ways of accompanying one another and the people of God into a prophetic future? What do you think, from your experience in your diocese and working with others, what is the idea of collaboration within the church ministry that closes us off to new possibilities and to accompany one another? Take a few minutes, share with the person next to you, a couple minutes. What do you think gives us a sense of this? So, one of my favorite, in my graduate class, right now I'm teaching a graduate class, it's on critical issues. It's on organization and management in church, organization and management in the Catholic Church. It's a graduate course for all those in pastoral ministry. It's a required course. A book by Ronald Heifetz is called Leadership on the Line. And it's one of my favorite books to use in class, and every time I meet a new bishop, I give it to him as a gift. I'm still believing in Gutenberg. I still give books. I still like to hold a book in my hand. That's an old school. But Ronald Heifetz, in his book Leadership on the Line, says, people do not fear change, they fear loss. People do not fear change. People are changing all the time in their life, but they fear loss. And I think that's part of what happens in ministry when we talk about collaboration. People are not afraid of changing, but they're afraid of losing something. Losing a position, losing some money in their budget, losing some staff. You can just name it, what the loss is. But people are afraid of loss. If we can demonstrate that the change and the collaboration that we're bringing offers more synergy than scarcity, they will go along with us. But we have to, how we present collaboration and this change is very important. So remember, people are not afraid to change. They will create all kind of new models in the parish, in the diocese, as long as we don't present it in such a way to say, oh, we're going to have this huge transformation through the Caribbean. Everything's going to be different. Everything's going to be changed. As soon as you've done that, they all shut down. Because they're putting up their defenses. They are not going to sink in this new paradigm that you're advocating. But if I say, we're discussing with you a fantastic way of increasing, enhancing your ministry, that you can do more and be enhanced by, it changes the whole conversation. So keep that in mind. People are not afraid of change. They're afraid of loss. And when we talk about this new communications plan, it has to be about the benefit of synergy. So this ecclesial ministry paradigm shift, collaboration changes the way we exist, we relate, and how we work together. It's just a whole new way of the way we do this. So let's look at some collaboration initiatives. These are some that have not worked. Millions and millions of dollars because we didn't get the idea of collaboration. Back in the 1980s, the Catholic Bishops' Conference, the USCCB, decided that we really needed to find, do you know how long we've been talking about collaboration in the church? God, we dump so much money into it and we never go anyplace because we don't take it seriously enough. People are afraid of, not change, but afraid of loss. So the bishops were going to have this national meeting, invite the heads of all the major national associations, Catholic associations in the United States. Every association sending 3 people, because when you send 3 people, those 3 people can go back and work together. If you only send 1, that 1 has to convince everybody else. At the University of Dayton, when I have conferences, always 3 come. We never ask for 1 because it just doesn't work to the full extent, because they stand alone, they're a silo. 3 people came. We had over 400 people. It was held at the University of Dayton. The Marianist community, the University of Dayton is a Catholic Marianist university, put a lot of money into this. The president at that time, Brother Ray Fitz, firmly is a believer of dialogue and collaboration in the church and in the work that he does. We had the best facilitators, everyone was there. The title was called Catholic Education Futures Project. The term Catholic education did not mean Catholic education per se, only Catholic schools. It was everything the church does is Catholic education. Do you think we could get all those different ministries off center stage to think their ministry was Catholic education? They come back and say, well, I'm liturgy, I'm not Catholic education. Oh, yeah, you are Catholic education. No, that's not. I'm catechesis, I'm not Catholic. Everyone, for a whole week, we went round and round. Bishops we had 50 bishops present. The tension was so high, it's the wonder the University of Dayton just didn't blow up. People could not get off center stage. When it finished, it came up with a series of statements, but nothing was resolved. So the president of the university said, okay, there has to be another way of doing this. I mean, he really is stick to it. So he asked 3 of us to form a committee. This is like the scriptures. He said, Sister-Angela, I want you to find 12 dioceses in the United States that have some form of collaboration. Have them send 3 people to the University of Dayton, and with a team of 6 of you, we'll do intensive interviews to find out where are the models of collaboration that we could build upon to begin the conversation. Do you think I could find 12 dioceses in the United States with Now, at that time, I served on the Bishops' Communications Committee, and a lot of bishops were dear friends of mine. And I would call them, and I would say, Bishop, I'm looking for, how's collaboration in your diocese? And he'd say, oh, yeah, let me tell you about it. Then I called Father Phil Murnian, who was the head of a national association that dealt with research in parishes. He knew everything going on in the United States. It was a national research center. I called him and I said, Phil, can you name 12 dioceses in the United States that have any kind of collaboration? He said, Angela Ann, you'll be lucky if you can find 2. However, we stretched the term collaboration, brought these 12 dioceses in. We began individual interviews with them, and when we finished after 2 days, they all decided there was no collaboration in their diocese, and realized that collaboration is the most difficult thing to do in the church. We just are afraid of it, or we just don't get it. We have to let go. That's why part of this is very important. So collaboration, $1 million later, 20-some years later, nothing happened. Is there not something wrong with this picture? Is not something wrong with this picture? The Catholic Telecommunications Network of America. Late 1970s, the bishops of the United States decided to establish the Catholic Telecommunications Network of America. Great vision. We were going to have every parish, well, that was before the internet, huh? Every parish was going to have a satellite downlink. Every parish was going to see these great programs to support the mission of the church. Now, I was part of the committee because, one of my other hidden claims to fame, I started in cable television 11 years before Mother Angelica. I built a cable TV studio way before she even thought about it. The difference is I worked for the archdiocese and she had her own community. She had more freedom to go her own way. But because I was working in cable television, the bishops, I was working with the bishops. I was the host of I co-anchored the bishops' meeting when they were covered live over satellite communication. I hosted many of their programs. I produced programs. But the Catholic Telecommunications Network of America, the bishops all agreed to support it and put millions and millions of dollars in it. But as it unfolded, the team who coordinate and produce CTNA were all satellite communication professionals. They produced programs that they thought were great professional programs, but they never asked the people in the diocese, the heads of liturgy, social justice, catechesis, or Catholic schools, what they needed in their diocese to make this work. And you know what happened? They all rebelled. And they forced their bishops, in a sense, to no longer support CTNA because it was not supporting the mission of the church. When it went to close down, I wrote a proposal to the bishops that they turn this over to the Catholic Educational Association and the National Conference for Catechetical Leaders. But by that time, they didn't want to have anything to do with satellite communication anymore. And that was the demise for the next 15 to 20 years, that foundations were not giving money to dioceses at large sums for communications because it failed. And it failed because of a lack of collaboration. And that's been documented in an article I wrote. The silo diocesan offices is another issue. When diocesan offices, every time that I'm called in by a bishop to come work with his diocese about communications, I end up meeting with the communications director, and he or she may have the Catholic press, maybe radio, or maybe television, but never are they talking to the other ministries in the diocese. And when I ask them if they will, they say, well, we're too busy doing what we need to do. We don't have time to talk to them. I says, it's all going to collapse. And so they go and they set up a radio station, they set up some TV, they do some cable TV, and they create these individual silo ministries based upon one person. And when that one person dies, that one person is transferred to another parish. That person leaves the ministry, the whole ministry collapses. Every time. In Africa, I can't tell you how many millions and millions of dollars have gone to Africa, and it was based on silo ministry, and it all collapsed. That's why I say there's poor stewardship of our communication funds and support within the church. This has to change. In the Caribbean, based upon what we're doing, we can change that if we work together. The merger of UNDA and OSIC into SIGNIS. Oh yeah. Some of my friends here know the sleepless nights I had over that one. SIGNIS, well, it used to be UNDA, radio and television, OSIC, film, USIP, press. 3 international organizations recognized by the Vatican. For years, since 1973, they have been talking about merging. Do you think they could ever get off center stage? Nope, they just couldn't get off center stage. Finally, we did begin to seriously look at it in the late 1980s into the early 1990s. We met and we encouraged USIP to be part of the conversation. UNDA radio and television, OSIC with cinema. USIP said, we can stand alone. We don't need to merge. We're stronger than you are. We don't need you. Now, isn't that interesting? If I'm stronger than you, I don't need you. I've seen that with religious communities. Sometimes when religious communities are talking about merging or converging, some communities will say, well, we're strong enough. We don't need you yet. Well, give me a break. Where's your common ground, huh? So what happened? UNDA and I'm oversimplifying this, as some of you know. UNDA and OSIC merged in 2001, not with some scars, not with some suffering, but we merged and formed SIGNIS. But what happened to USIP? USIP doesn't exist anymore. It collapsed It could have, I believe it could still be if it would have stayed in focus with Linda Nosek. When you don't collaborate and work together, something has to give. Something collapses. And that's what we're looking at. The virtual learning community for faith formation, which I don't direct anything because I don't micromanage. I don't believe in micromanaging. If you want to have a collaborative group, a collaborative team, you don't micromanage. Micromanage is the death of creativity and imagination. So I simply say I'm part of a team. I'm sorry. I work for them. I work for them. We have dioceses that partner with us. I think we heard it during our break. And I know Father John is working very hard to promote this. We have dioceses that don't even know they're partners with us to have taken advantage because nobody said anything, because only the religious ed office keeps the secret. And then all of a sudden somebody hears it someplace else. We have to share the good news. So we have to share it's open for everything. The emergence of new collaborative learning environments. One of the ways the church needs to change, because we have to find a new way of being church. I'm not sure what goes on in your educational environments, whether they are Catholic schools or public schools. And I have some sense, because I've done some work in Port of Spain with Catholic school principals and others because of online courses. But the learning environments in education have shifted. We at higher education, we have to change the way we design our classroom space. And faculty no longer, what I'm doing now is not how totally I teach at the university, because it's collaborative learning that is going on in education. Children are coming in from kindergarten, in first and second grade, are learning collaborative learning. You know, they learn by sitting around tables and exploring together. They're learning through distance education. When they come to the university, they do not want to see anyone sitting down lecturing at them. Now think about what we're doing in our catechetical programs in our parishes. Remember I said we have digital natives with digital immigrants teaching digital natives in an analog culture. That's what's happening in our catechesis. Why are young people coming to our faith formation? Because we're not connecting with women. Their brains have been rewired. There's nothing wrong with our young people. They think differently. Well, that's a whole nother lecture on neuroscience, which I teach. But their brains are rewired. When they come to Mass to celebrate the liturgy, their brains are rewired. They're not ready. They're not going to accept the traditional way that it's just, okay, it's a nice liturgy, it's nice. Their brains are looking for something else, so they pull out their iPhones and they start playing games on iPhones while the pastor is giving this fantastic, stimulating, wonderful, powerful homily that he spent all night up preparing so it would move minds and hearts, and they're not paying any attention because the way it's being communicated is they're not using the images, the words, the symbols that's captivating their imagination. And anyway, their attention span is only 35 seconds. So as soon as you give a homily beyond 2 minutes, they're gone. They're gone. So learning environments are changing. Workspaces are changing. All moving towards collaboration. And that's why I'm trying to get to the point. Practical example. As some of my friends know, to my detriment, 3.5 years ago, I was asked to move the Institute to another place on campus, not far. Okay, I wasn't happy, but okay, we did it. And they said, you could create the most beautiful space you want, and I like beauty. I think everything in the church should be beautiful. It doesn't mean it has to be rich, but it has to be beautiful. Simplicity and beauty. That's what captures the religious imagination of people. So we created this wonderful, simple floor with beautiful religious art. I think we need beautiful art. You know, the church is rich in multimedia. We don't use our multimedia well enough in collaboration. So we designed this beautiful space, and I was so happy because I said, oh, now I can settle down. I've been here at UD for almost 40 years. I'm not going to move again, my space. God, thank you. So I got all energized for all the things we're going to do. And in less than 2 years, I'm on a plane coming home from Abu Dhabi after 2 weeks of giving talks, meeting with the nuncio and the bishops and the priests. And I should have not looked at my email. You know how that is? And I opened my email, and from the provost, he wrote, "Dear Sister Angela Ann, I know you're headed home today, so as soon as you return to campus, I need to see you immediately." Do you know what that does to your heart? Why do you have to see me? Well, fortunately, then he said, "P.S. You probably would like to know why I want to see you." He says, "We have a great opportunity for you. We're going to offer you an opportunity to move the Institute to this part of campus." And I thought, I don't want to move to that part of campus. Oh, yeah. That was the worst 32 hours of flight I had in my life. And I came back and I told the staff, and the staff said, "We don't want to do this because now we all have our own individual offices. And they're beautiful. But where we're going to move is the new kind of workspace, collaborative workspace, the new space, the new way you work." Our team fretted for 2 months, and I tried to keep saying, let's look what's positive, let's look at opportunities. So then we went to a temporary space, which was a collaborative learning space, an open space like this. What's happened after 3 months? Our team said, "We really like this. We're talking together more than we've ever talked together before. I know what's happening in all the other offices because I see what other people are doing. And we go to one another's carols and we talk to one another. And it's good for me because I just go stand in the middle of the room and say, I have an announcement." But that environment has changed. So the collaboration is changing at all levels. If the church does not collaborate, we're already in trouble. We're in more trouble than before. We're more trouble. Working on grants, I said that before. Foundations want to know where there's collaboration. If Father John and the AEC is going to work for finding monies for this project, they're going to have to demonstrate that each diocese is making a commitment to this. That will sell it. That will help us get forward. So collaboration means taking time, sharing resources, dreams, risk, open to dialogue, looking at different gifts. It's really opening ourselves. Collaboration nurtures this: abundance versus scarcity. You've heard me say this many times, huh? When you collaborate because you see abundance among ourselves, not scarcity. Second, you have community versus individualism. One of the issues with young people, and we're seeing this in university, this is no comment on every young person that's here, but there's a growing sense of individualism and not community. It's what I have to take care of myself. Third, synergy versus dullness and burnout. I think one of my spiritual directors I had in my life, when I was talking about I was getting burnt out, and she said, "Angela Ann, you don't get burnt out in ministry. You have to rethink of how you minister. Ministry does not cause burnout. How you organize and structure your ministry and work with others is what causes what you call burnout." And quality of stewardship versus duplication of resources, a wisdom community versus singular closed-minded focus. So collaboration does that for us. So if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. Isn't that true? If you do the same thing, you're going to get the same thing. You're going to get the same thing unless you find another way. Today's problems cannot be solved by the so-called solutions that caused the problem in the first place. And Ronald Heifetz uses this term in his books, Leadership on the Line. He says, there's two ways that the church tries to solve problems: as a technical fix or an adaptive challenge. The technical fix is when something happens in the church, we say, well, you know what? It's not broken. We've always done it this way before. Let's just go back and do what we've always done before, and this too will pass. Technical fix. We try to use solutions that we thought were in the past, and they don't work today. He says an adaptive challenge calls us to look at what needs to be done and to find another way of thinking about it. So that's either way. So he says, you got to get on the balcony, folks. Have any of you ever gone to a dance? D-A-N-C-E. I mean, if I expect everybody here to say you went to a dance. I can't imagine people in the Caribbean not saying you go to a dance. You have to go to, I mean, there's some. Now, if you go to a dance with a hall like this, I don't know if you've ever gone to a balcony or go to the balcony, and you stand on the balcony, you have a different view of the dance than if you're on the floor. You know, you have to, it's just like if you go to Mass. If you go to the balcony of the church and look up, you really what people are really doing in their pews. You may not want to really know what's going on down there, but you have a sense of what's really going on there. Ronald Heifetz says, with collaboration, sometimes we have to go on the balcony and get away from being involved on the dance floor because we're too close to it. That's what integrated pastoral communications planning is. It's getting on the balcony so that you can get detached a little bit. You know, it's when we fly. You know, when I'm flying over the Caribbean islands, yeah, what a beautiful pattern it is. And then all of a sudden you land and the only thing you see is this little acre of land. But when you're up high, you see more connections. That's what collaboration does. So let me go here. So the fear of the live encounter is this. There's what prevents collaboration. First, fear of diversity. When we say ours is not the only view, pluralism, but I fear diversity when I don't want to be open to other people's point of view. Second, fear of conflict means divergent points of view. I don't like conflict either. I hate conflict. I will go to the utmost ends of the world to have peace. But you know, sometimes creative conflict, if we know how to engage with creative conflict, is good for us. And fear of losing identity, sense of self, sense of losing our position. So I don't want to collaborate because if I collaborate, they might dissolve my office. If I collaborate, they might merge our parishes. If I collaborate, they're going to merge our Catholic schools. If I collaborate, maybe they're going to rethink all of the communications offices and come up with a new model of communications, and I may or may not be part of that vision, or I may not have the same position I had before. When we start thinking in that attitude, we begin to lose. So if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten, if we do it that way. So there's 3 times, so you can decide what kind of group you're going to imagine in your diocese and in the AC. First group, those who make something happen. Second group, those who wait for the things to happen. And third, those who wonder what had happened. So you decide which ones. Are you going to make it happen? Are you going to wait for all the other dioceses to do something so then you could follow suit? Or is the whole thing going to move forward and you're going to wake up one morning like Rip Van Winkle and say, what happened? You know, sometimes I think that way with the new technology. It's just, whoever asks that we have all this technology that I have to keep learning, you know? I was happy with my manual typewriter and my mimeograph, and I might get Stetner. Remember those? If you do, I know how old you are. Mahatma Gandhi says, you must be the change you want to see. So want to change, looking at collaborative model, we have to be that change. You folks are the leaders. You are the leaders. You are called for leadership. You're in this room today, you are called to leadership. That is a moral and ethical responsibility that we have to the church. We cannot think in silo mentality. We have to think collaboratively. We have to think about community. We have to think and bringing all those pieces together for the future of the church, because we are the church and we need this new way of being church. So collaboration changes the way we work together, and it's between cooperation, coordination, and collaboration. Cooperation simply means we exist together. Doesn't make any big difference. Coordination means we realize we do not exist in isolation, but we may not affect one another. Collaboration calls for interdependence. All too often in dioceses, what we call collaboration is really cooperation. Or what we call as collaboration is only coordination. We've masked the words to fit our idea of what we want to protect ourselves. Remember, people don't fear change, they fear loss. We have to free ourselves as leaders. We have to free ourselves. It's like taking, not exactly, but it's almost like taking a deck of cards and throwing it in the air and saying, okay, let's see what happens. But the pieces come down and then we try to match them and work with them. But we know what the pieces are. So let me just throw this in because I think this is, can't let this piece go by. Don't you love it? You knew I was going to get something in about women in this sooner or later. But there's a relational differences and implications for collaborative ministry that research indicates. This is not an either or, but it shows how we complement one another. Female approach generally, and there's always exceptions to always the rule. A female approach tendency tends to be to compromise, cooperation, and loyalty to relationships. It's modus operandi that's part of that reality. A male orientation tends to be competition, independence, and obedience to rules. Oh, how are the men feeling about this? How are the women feeling about this? But I think, again, this is not just, a clear-cut issue, but generally it's because of how our cultural context has brought men and women have an anima and an animus. And so we have both of those in our persons, and we have to nurture that shadow side in order for collaboration to take place. So bringing together those wisdom insights together. Nurturing constructive relationships and positive attitudes. You got to be positive about this. Oh God, I wish you would all go out here dancing. The eternal perichoresis in your heart. Stir into flame, stir into flame, Stir into flame the idea of a new way of being church, of working together in a new way. As Pope Francis said, fresh energy and new imagination. You can't go back and say we did it this way in the past and it worked 100 years ago. We're just going to wait for the next 100 years and it'll all come back. It's gone. But we are called for fresh energy and a new imagination. Therefore, we have to listen to one another. So Ken Blanchard said, if God had wanted us to talk more than listen, he would have given us 2 mouths rather than 2 ears. That's interesting, huh? So let me end up with here. Okay, let me stop there.